Hello and welcome to the second installment of our 4-part webinar series regarding digital transformation and data-driven analytics. My name is Beatrice Bösiger and I am again your host today. I am a journalist with Finanz und Wirtschaft. Today our topic is finance. Finance departments in different industries and sectors are often sitting on a very large volume of data, but the question of how to lift this hidden data economy is not always easy for them. In the next 60 minutes, we will be discussing how data-driven applications help companies become smarter and more efficient. And we will also hear practical tips and examples of what financial professionals and CFOs need if they want to start a digital transformation in their respective organizations. With me to discuss these questions are Jürgen Lindner. He is a Senior Vice President and CMO for Cloud Applications Marketing at Oracle. Jürgen Lindner has 20 years of experience in the field of enterprise software, and before joining Oracle in 2016, he worked in different leading positions with SAP. Next, we have Thomas Dittrich. He is the Chief Financial Officer of Galderma, a Swiss dermatology company. He has long experience as CFO in different companies. Before Galderma, he was, for example, CFO at Shire, and he also worked with Sulzer. And then we have Frans. He is the CFO of the Dutch law firm, the Brauw, Blackstone, Westbroek, and I am saying sorry for my bad Dutch pronunciation. He is also an experienced CFO with international professional service firms. He worked in Amsterdam, New Jersey, and London. Sorry, not New Jersey, it was Jersey and London. The rules are the same as last time. Each of the panelists will give a short 10-minute presentation. Afterwards, we will discuss some of the topics raised. I encourage you to submit your questions during the presentations. I will collect them and we can discuss them afterwards. Your questions, you can put them, as always, simply by clicking on the Q&A button on your Zoom. The webinar will also be recorded and made available tomorrow on the homepage of Finanz und Wirtschaft. That's www.fuw.ch. Before we start, I would like to take a quick look at our survey. The question I asked was, has data-driven analytics the potential to improve the financial performance of your company? Yes, we use data-driven solutions already, said 29% of the people who answered. We are working on data-driven solutions, said 14%, and 36% said we discuss data-driven analytics as a possible solution, and 21% said we don't have plans to use data-driven solutions. So I hope you will hear many useful examples today. But now over to Jürgen Lindner, who will, in his presentation, be looking beyond finance as usual. If somebody from the audience already has a question, don't hesitate to post it in your Zoom. Mr. Lindner, the mic is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me in the first place. I welcome you from the west coast of California. As you can take from my German name, this is not where I grew up. I grew up at the Lake of Constance, so very close to where this webinar takes place right now. And allow me to quickly share a couple of thoughts around what's going on, what I'm observing in the industry. Quick check, Beatrice, can you see the slides? Does it come up great? So when the topic came up, looking beyond finance as usual, I said, okay, let me maybe first go back one step and introduce myself a little differently. I had the privilege to be born in the night of the moon landing, and with that likely have a genetic defect to a certain extent that I'm just intellectually curious as to where technology is headed. And that's likely also why I made my profession in the software industry. Now, with that in mind, what I typically tend to do, and I see it really as a privilege, a part of my job, is to converse with finance leaders around the world. And what we can certainly observe to the point earlier made, is that the finance function is undergoing a dramatically swift challenge and change here. Now, pandemic has certainly accelerated that. There's a lot written about that it was fast forwarded and forever changed. But when I have those conversations, it's typically a couple of topics that do come up. Over the course of the pandemic, we saw rapid planning cycles. And whereas in the past, potentially you were comfortable doing an annual planning or a biannual planning, we worked with customers doing even weekly plans, bi-weekly plans during the course of the pandemic. And that was really heavily done based on data sets available and planning solutions where we could team up with customers. The same thing is true for risk assessments. I think each and every one of us has experienced as to what supply chain risk, what human resource risks were involved in the last couple of, it's close to 24 months now that we're really sitting in this type of setup here. New business models, nothing short of remarkable what we've been observing, where, for example, the customers had a very different expectations, touchless processing, touchless payments, curbside pickup. So very different business models needed to be spun off very quickly. And if anything, we saw that merger and acquisition divestitures are at an all-time high right now. So how could we work with customers to really help them make those moves very quickly? I think by now it's fair to say that every one of us is a supply chain expert. I think we have experienced what disruptions can bring. And with that, we have, as CFOs, a high responsibility to see how we can also help fund those changes that need to occur. And then certainly a change that's going to stay here is around flexible work environments. There's also the term of great resignation. So your HR talent is likely much, much more mobile than it ever used to be. And that has massive repercussions, for example, on office real estate. It has massive repercussions on finding the right talent. And how do you accommodate certain work models where your talent acquisition can look very differently, regionally and internationally? So all those challenges really drive a different focus right now on the value of data, securing the data, having intense planning cycles, but also look beyond the finance function. Most of those models here require you to be very much in tune from a finance model perspective to supply chain models, to HR models, to customer models. So connect the planning. It's like the topic that I'm discussing most right now, to really see how all of those data sets can come together. And the trend that started prior to the pandemic is relentless automation. What we're trying to see is really what are the mundane tasks, the repetitive tasks, where we can assist with software to really identify them, augment the human potential, and eventually take over certain tasks that are simply repetitive. And this brings a discussion about a very different skill set of finance individuals in the next couple of years. I'm going to show you a couple of studies that we did that were very eye-opening for us as well. And I do think the topic of artificial intelligence here reigns very high, because we've also done a study, and a lot of talent will not ever want to work for companies who are not decisively invested in those new technologies. So it really becomes a hiring criteria. One of those studies that we have been launching is a rather provocative study where we wanted to see how ready are individuals to really trust their financial well-being on an algorithm. We did it for consumers, we did it for finance professionals, for CEOs, and the findings were pretty mesmerizing. I think it's a known fact that McKinsey already states that in the finance function itself, roughly 89% of what is being done is deemed highly automatable. That's already a stunner, likely for a lot. But what is even more remarkable is that based on the conditioning in the consumer behavior, where oftentimes you take artificial intelligence for granted by routing through your next location where you want to be, you're constantly streaming services, learning your patterns. So you're accepting, you're very endorsing typically as a consumer on those type of algorithms. But when it comes to managing finances, we thought it might be a very different story. Quite contrary, we actually found that a lot of folks really would trust both their personal finance situation as well as their professional finance situation on the help of what we call robots. So algorithms machine learning capabilities to really steer them in the right direction. So a big readiness. And what's even more interesting is that the 91% down there, it really is a generational shift that we're seeing in your workforce. So as your workforce is infused with new talent, oftentimes AI, machine learning has become a hiring criteria. Folks really don't want to take their careers to companies that are potentially not decisively making those steps because they feel that their aspiration from a career perspective might not be met. And that is an interesting thing that every employer should take to heart very heavily. Now, when in consumer life, you're asked, obviously you're conditioned to ask a question, you ask Siri, you ask Alexa. But when I do typically a study and ask when is the last time you had an intelligent conversation with your ERP system, I typically don't get a lot of hand raises. And that is mostly because first, okay, I've never conversed with my ERP system, let alone an intelligent conversation. Yet those technologies are already there. What you're seeing here on the right-hand side are just a couple of examples of use cases that our customers are using today in really leveraging data-driven applications. So we're plowing through vast amounts of data to really simplify not only the business processes, but also the experiences that your employees can have when interacting with the software system. And this ranges anywhere from automating workflows, making them humanly accessible through voice, expense reports. I mean, maybe in the last 2 years, traveling was not a big thing, but it's going to come back for sure. And having the help of algorithms and fraud prevention directly built into the process of submitting an expense report are massively time-saving and compliance-saving type of activities. Analytics and predictions. To my point earlier, I do think every company right now is really trying to see how do I best structure my data? What type of data sets do I have available? And what type of head starts can I get into this? Do I have the possibility to use data science as of day one? Is there predefined sets of KPIs that look across lines of businesses potentially? All of that is something that is available and we'd be happy to help. And we do that for financial projections. You see that on the lower right, like revenue predictions, where it is just known that, well, as humans, we're predictable to a certain extent. If I have approved the same workflow 9 times, there's a very high likelihood that the next time, the 10th time, I'm going to react the same way. If a system can pick up on that and say, hey, Jürgen, is it okay for us to auto-approve this task? And then you might say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Please do approve it. The next time, it's maybe done for you automatically. So it's building trust based on data sets, based on patterns, where we see a very high potential to really impact the finance function very heavily. And it's very exciting actually to see this change. Autonomous operations, financial closing of the books. Take Oracle as a quick example. We have managed, even throughout the pandemic and remote work, to shave 15 days off of our close cycle. So how was that possible? It was really something where now we're in a position in like 10 days after the quarter closes, we can report out with the street in confidence with the numbers. And this is really based on process optimization potential we found. It has to do with data, automated and approved. So it's very interesting to see how we can create value very quickly and to share our own learnings in using our own software in the same precise configuration as every customer would to the customer community. It's called Oracle at Oracle. And we invite you to simply also check that out and talk to our practitioners, how they're using software to really get those remarkable results. Anomaly detection, fraudulent spend, certainly a very big topic in every finance department. And it is proven that machines are simply more swift, more precise on picking up deviations and anomalies. So we're seeing oftentimes customer using our software for really making sure that exceptions are just found much, much more easily. And then what I was saying earlier, connected intelligence. I'm not saying connected insights consciously. There's a lot of insights we all have every day, but intelligence is insight plus recommendation so that you can take a confident step So connected intelligence across all lines of the business is something that we're really heavily invested into. And with that, we feel that cloud has a very heavy hand in the conversation with our customer. It's oftentimes used as a catalyst for really getting those functions done. And there is a couple of myths around cloud. Oftentimes it's seen, oh my God, I need to do away with my past investments entirely and go all in on cloud. No, you don't have to. Absolutely not. I would advise against it, actually. It's really something where we say, take it bite-sized, take a business process and get started. But please do make sure that the practices that you've been banking on in the past might not be the ones that carry you through into the future. So really, when you go and work with any vendor, please do assess as to what type of opportunity to have to get bite-sized started, have a composable open architecture to really get you to the next step. And I'll leave you with one thought. Everyone knows Darwin, and we have seen that in the age of digital, we have already seen massive changes in the composition of the S&P 500, for example. I would think, and this is my own saying, I think corporate Darwinism in the age of AI is going to be ruthless. So I leave you with that provocative thoughts. So data is really at the center of everything, and hand it back to Beatrice Bösiger.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Lindner. Next up is Thomas Dittrich, who will give us some insights as to how data is supporting Galderma's transformation. Mr. Dittrich, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bösiger. Thanks so much. And in terms of presentation, I think when that comes up, I'll get going here in a second. Just a second here. Just a second. Okay. Okay, can you see the slides? Okay. I think you should see that the slides now here. What I'm touching on is how data is supporting the transformation at Galderma. And for that, let me quickly touch on what Galderma is and what journey we're on. Galderma is a company founded originally as a joint venture between Nestle and L'Oreal back in 1981, focused on dermatology, skincare, and moved into medical aesthetics in 2011 with acquiring a Swedish company called QMed. And then the parents, so to speak, divorced, and Nestle took over the whole company as Nestle Skin Health. It did not really go that well because Galderma did not fit into the Nestle portfolio. So in 2019, it was sold to a private equity consortium that we are part of, led by EQT and a few sovereign wealth funds, because Nestle Skin Health was just 3% of overall Nestle and didn't really fit the portfolio. So since then, we have taken on the company and put it on a rapid transformation path. And that gave us opportunity because we were able to set up the company a little bit afresh. It's kind of a 41-year-old startup, so to speak, and we were able to leapfrog in terms of technology because we had to exit the Nestle infrastructure, and that gave us the chance to set things up fresh. What we went for is building a company with strong customer focus, innovation, and strong performance. The financial performance is actually very, very strong. We're growing double digits. In order to do so, we knew we needed to build an efficient and integrated platform to support our ambition to become the leading dermatology company. And that translated into product launches that we enabled through that, innovation, and building an exciting growth agenda that is backed by a pipeline of new products and builds together unique heritage and a premium company offering overall. So that's the backdrop. And against that, this is where we stand today. We have turned this division of Nestlé into a pretty simple, coherent, integrated dermatology company that spans the whole spectrum from consumer to healthcare professionals. We are, if you will, a sector champion, a little bit like what you have in eye care with Alcon or in dental care with Straumann or others. We are in that sector. We are the largest one globally that only focuses on dermatology across many channels, direct to consumer, online, retailers, pharmacies. We have a large sales force, over 1,500 sales reps. As you see here, we touch on 180,000, almost 200,000 HCPs globally. Across our flagship brands in the consumer space, Cetaphil is very well known in the US and many other markets. Benzac, Differin, our acne treatments. In the medical aesthetics space, we're #2 behind Allergan with fillers and neuromodulators. Dysport, Restylane are important brands here. And then on the prescription medicine side, we have Epiduo, Oracea, that are drugs helping with skin conditions like acne, rosacea, and we are market leader on those. So overall, a very integrated play in a sector and as a sector champion. So how did we get there? What did we do? When we started the transformation after the closing of the buyout deal, October 1st, 2019, we knew we needed to drive growth and therefore need the right platform. And we focused on both. And I start on the right-hand side of the slide. We built a fit-for-purpose platform through standardization of processes, simplification. We could not afford to have large company, Nestlé-like complexities that are just not fit for a company of our size of roughly 3 billion and fast growing. We really invested in automation and centralization, leveraging shared services as a platform, and optimized new best-in-class tools. And we'll talk about that in a second. And this builds also on what Mr. Lindner said before. Clear governance, roles, data stewardship, and targeted our allocation of resources. With that, we became faster, nimbler, and we freed up financial spend that we then could invest in growing on the left-hand side and expanding geographical markets, accelerating the innovation. We launched 21 new products last year, when during previous ownership, the company has launched 0 or just 1 per year. And we'll launch 22 to 23 new products next year. And with that, we're expanding our product portfolio with new solutions for patients and consumers. This also brought a lot of value to our employees because we freed up time for them to focus on value-added activities, a little bit like not having to do expense reports for too long when you can have AI help you prepare it, and it goes much, much faster. And deeper data and insights and visibility into why consumers behave in a certain way, what their needs are, and why they have certain preferences, and predicting those has enabled greatly this growth journey we're on. The company was pretty much flat on the top line. As I said, we're now growing solid double digits, and we project to grow at that rate for the years to come. Now, what kind of transformation did you do? Nice what you said here, Thomas, but what was that really? What did you have before, and how does the after look like? And here it is on one slide. In the G&A side, finance, HR, IT, procurement, it was very much in silos. Siloed functions with a corporate center and a lot of duplication, local support functions in every country that we do business in. And we moved that to an end-to-end approach. End-to-end processes, integrated business planning, record to report, source to pay, order to cash, hire to retire, and freed up resources and pooled what we could not automate or what we could not actually streamline out completely into shared services. And that also gave us opportunities to bring in capabilities we did not have before. And we chose for a shared services center solution with a BPO, business process outsourcing provider, with Genpact in India and Eastern Europe. And we actually set that up and did it all the way while the world was in lockdown. We were able to continue and set it up, and we are now up and running with this in a good way. Now, what's the role of technology in this? And as I said before, since we had to reinvent the company anyway, we had 1 to 1.5 year, sometimes 2 year service level agreements with Nestle on systems, on infrastructure, on office space. We knew that we could do one of two things: either do a bit of copy what already existed, but then we would end up with a situation that was way too complicated, because we're not a 300,000 people multi-billion company. We're a 6,000 people 3 billion company growing that very fast. So we went the other way. We said we'll go end to end, and we looked at processes end to end, optimized them, standardized them, automated them, integrated them, centralized them, and used technology wherever we could. And also there, given we have done similar transformations before, we went to proven systems and went to cloud-based systems pretty aggressively, knowing the potential and the power that sits behind it. So you see here, source to pay with Coupa, record to report is a combination of Oracle and Infor, as is order to cash, integrated business planning, and then produce to sell, the stock keeping and planning processes Infor. HR is Workday. We just went live with that earlier this month. And then the IT operating model has also been renewed with ServiceNow. Applications and ERP harmonization is underway. We still have 5 ERP systems. We're going down to 3. Will we ever get down to 1? Maybe, maybe not. We may not be able to afford it, but we put a layer across to integrate in a very good and harmonious way. Key for us was master data management and really implementing governance, data definitions on data, and putting infrastructure and capabilities in place that allows us to do that. And the systems that we're using here is what you see on the right-hand side: Snowflake, Dell, Boomi, Azure, Power BI. But it's not just we put the systems in place, we went really end-to-end, looked at our needs, and then enabled them via systems with the transformation, with the right governance, and with the right talent that we brought in-house. And then global business services is behind it, and you see the pillars here. Now, enabling this helped really real-time insights across all processes, and you see a little bit what's cutting across. It's really Snowflake as a single source of truth data, master and reference data, and one reporting platform. You see a lot of those points on here that I said before. If I just look into performance management, we now have an integrated performance management approach that allows us to look down into the organization very deeply, down to gross profit, to cash flow, into the smallest units, and track forecasting accuracy and budget tracking in a much more automated way.
Thank you very much. Can I please ask you to come to a close, Mr. Dittrich? You have your time.
Yeah. The lessons learned are
Mm-hmm.
here. It's really a couple of points. It's really do it with an experienced team, broad involvement, make it leader-led, have a North Star mentality, try to go for ambition, try to go for even cloud-based when the opportunity is there. Use an end-to-end approach, make it fit for purpose. Don't go for a Mercedes when you don't need it. And do both, grow and transform at the same time. Thank you very much. And with that, I hand back to Mrs. Bösiger.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And now Frans Post will be telling us what a CFO needs for a successful digital transformation. A quick reminder, if you have any questions for him or for any of the other panelists, please post them in the Q&A section in your Zoom. I will collect them and we can discuss them afterwards. Mr. Post, the mic is yours.
Hello? Do you hear
Hello?
me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, excellent. Good. I had some difficulty here, I think, getting the connection right. Malte has my slides. If he would put them up, that would be excellent. Thank you very much. Let's roll it back. Yes, thank you. Thank you all for having me here. I am the CFO of the Brauw, Blackstone, Westbroek in the Netherlands, and I am, and I've only recently started there. The digital transformation is an interesting topic, I think, and we've seen Jürgen as a visionary, I would say, and then followed by a view at of a much bigger company than we are. I am CFO of this law firm, which is the biggest law firm in the Netherlands, and we tend to say the best one. But that still means that it's a mid-sized company. We have about 750, 800 people, and most law firms that I've worked at are of about that size. That gives me a practical approach to digital transformation. And so what I would like to share with you a bit is some of the practical things that you could come up with, because as we've seen in the percentages earlier, there are quite a few companies that are not yet into that arena of digital transformation, and I think that is I think that what that tells me is that that at companies of my size, probably a lot of people haven't thought about it or don't have the practical experience to do that. At bigger companies, that has been quicker, I think, but I think we will find that at this mid-size, we don't really know. So I think if you ask a lot of people what they think of digital transformation is, they might not know, or they might have an idea. But as you can see here in the cartoon, it could work out like that. The definitions, there are numerous definitions, as in every new field. Digital transformation is the integration of digital technology into all areas of business, fundamentally changing how you operate and deliver value to customers. So it has these elements of change, of course, but it is, I think, one of the main things, and we've seen this before, is that that it stretches across the whole business, and I think that's one of the unique things of that the technology enables us now to do. We've seen in our firm, you start with silos, and then you start talking to each other, and then everybody discovers that there is a need across the firm and not in the different silos for information. And that's what I would like to take you through, and how to achieve that, and where you then get get stuck and get difficulty. we have used a roadmap for that, and we are using a roadmap. And I'm going to talk about step one now: identify your vision. The slide's going a bit too fast, but that's sorry for that. Thank you, Malte. So you start with the vision, and the digital transformation about change. And so because you need to create change, you will come into the typical issues around change, because not everybody wants to change. There's a lot to think about there that doesn't even have to do with digital transformation itself, but with transformation as a phenomena. So we start with a vision. You need to think about what you want to achieve. So what processes do you want to change? Where do you want to focus? Do you indeed want to introduce the use of data, which is something that in the current environment is, it's hard to get away from. Everybody talks about data. What do you want to do with that data? Are you going to use it to decision making, or are you going to use it for analysis? What are you going to use it for? And then if you think that you want to become data driven, then what does that really mean? So and how do you organize that? That's basically so you need to set a vision in which you make that clear, and that vision needs to be compelling, because people want to see something that's exciting and want to be able to follow in that direction and come with you, because it's different and change is difficult and people don't generally like change. And so there has to be something that tells them this is where we're going. So if you get to, so after you've defined the vision, you get to the next step. And because what I think is, I always say, technology. So this is about the role of the CFO in this change process. So once you've set your vision, then as a CFO you can choose what role you want to play in this. And I think that particularly in this field, a CEO has the opportunity to take a really big role, a bigger role than usual. I always say technology enables the change, but technology is not the change. So a lot of people think that data and digital transformation is an IT project, and that's often what it's looked at, particularly in, I think, firms of our size and smaller. People think this is IT. People think they get technology, and that then everything happens and everything changes and innovation will just occur. And I don't think that's per se true, because change is enabled by technology, but the change will still have to be in processes and people, and that's really important. The CFO can pick up his role, because the CFO has a number of things that other people don't have. If you're in sales, you're in sales. If you're in finance, you are in the whole company. So you have an overview of the company, you have an overview of different departments, of how they work, of how they cooperate, of how the company fits together. You have a strategic idea about that. So you have a higher aggregation level than people who are in individual functions. And I think that's specific to finance, because it's a bit of a double role. So you have the finance department, and then you have the finance global view of the company. The other thing that CFOs have is they understand data. So I tend to say in my company, I tend to say that the CFO is the boss of the data. So somebody in marketing can create a report, but I still want to see it. Somebody in sales can project revenue, but I still want to see it. Because if I don't back it, then to me in our company, it's not real, because everybody can start producing their own reports, but somebody needs to coordinate that. So I think the CFO is kind of the boss of the data, And in that respect, if you start looking at a data-driven company that starts operating at a platform of reporting and use the same data, that's a very important role. Now, so within that role, you can grab that. You will have to you'll have to connect business functions and the data in those functions. So you can connect HR data to finance. You can add CRM data, etc. You can build up this big picture of data driven from the individual functions that are in the company. And again, I think the CFO is particularly driven, is particularly well positioned to do that. It doesn't happen by itself. So in that role, you also need a lot of influencing. You need leadership. You need to step up, and you need to start talking to departments and to people who used to produce their own information, or who don't necessarily want to submit themselves to a broader picture. And there's a big role for leadership and change management in that. And I think that's so that's for the role. The next step in this journey is that once you've figured out what you want to do and what that looks like for the company, and as a CFO, once you've figured out how you are taking the lead in that, then you need to map out the steps you're going to take. So first, as we just talked about, you talk about alignment and getting people aligned in different parts of the company to come with the same view. And so you have to map out what is your objective. Then you have to align the people with that. You have to have a good message to make it obvious. In my company, I say right data, right analysis, right time, meaning everybody needs to get the stuff that they need for their decision making in their particular areas, and at the right time, so that it supports their decision making. So then you have to map out which data sources do you have. Do you need a data warehouse, a data platform to bring that together? How do you standardize reporting? How do you make sure that everybody looks at the same stuff? You need definitions for the different elements within the reporting. Revenue is revenue, but everybody thinks it's something different. You need one definition for that. What information needs does everybody have? So how do you know what to push out to which departments and what they need for their decision making? What do you do with security? Where is your data stored? Is it in the cloud? Does it go to different countries? Have you considered data restrictions, GDPR, things like that? They're all practical and they need to be on that roadmap. So that's important.
Mr. Post, thank you very much. May I please ask you to come to a close?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's I think the other most important subject is to talk about here, and yes, I'll talk to an end, is resistance. Are people willing to change? Is the team ready to move? Are there enough people who get it in the company? Can you get enough platform to create the change? And if not, then you need to work on that, because you need to deal with the blockers of the change and the people who facilitate. So you'll need change captains to move and to help you get that journey on the way. You have to look at what do you want your information to look like. So I would say you need standardized information. You need to create transparency, and you need to create easy access. Everybody should have it at their fingertips and has to be able to access what they need, and it needs to be simple and intuitive, etc. Not like digging into systems to try and find a certain report. It has to be just there, very simple, better access and better interpretation. So, and then the last step is really to build on the basis of all this, you build your roadmap. And the roadmap is, yeah, you can do that in different ways. And some people think the change will need 6 months. And some people think a change like this can take 3 years. It depends on how fast your company is and how fast you are willing to move, and some technical, of course, implications. If you have a bigger firm like Galderma, or you'll probably need more time. In smaller firms like mine, you can move quicker, and you have a big role yourself in driving that. So yeah, those are the 6 steps of the roadmap, I'd say. Identify your vision, define your role, map your journey, review your readiness, examine your capabilities, and then build the roadmap, and then you get going. That's the end goal, is to move into digital transformation. I don't think you can stop it, and so I would say for those 71% who haven't thought about it yet, embrace it, I'd say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Post. You raised a lot of issues that I would like to discuss right now with all 3 panelists. Mr. Dittrich, I would like to start with you, and I would really like to focus once again on the question of data. When it comes to data-driven solutions, the quality of the data that is used is always a big question. You mentioned that Galderma has a master data solution. Can you elaborate a little bit how you get good quality of data? And afterwards, Mr. Lindner and Mr. Post can maybe also talk about their experiences.
Yes, Mr. Post had actually touched on it. It starts with the definitions and understanding what you mean behind it. Revenue is revenue. Yes, well, even there in our industry, there is gross revenue, net revenue. Even there, that is not a super simple question. So it really starts with defining it and standardizing that, but not only on financial data, also on market share, and that it becomes really interesting on unstructured data to have the common platform and common understanding on that. So is that something where you start and you're finished in X amount of time? No, you start on financial data, but on others, it's about building the capability so that when new data necessities emerge, you can deal with it and can form a view on it.
Okay, so Mr. Lindner, you want to elaborate?
No, I think Mr. Dittrich is spot on. I do think data definition is really the crux of most of it, because I mean, especially for corporations that are a little larger, right? You typically have different starting points, different investment strategies that just over time materialized. Sometimes they're accidental, sometimes they are by design, but it's really something where the harmonization of data and the data modeling is typically where we see the primary challenge. It's not that the technology is actually in the way here. It's oftentimes the readiness really to say, okay, can we define jointly in architecture as to what the right data layer needs to look like for your corporation? And once you have that, then you can move rather decisively, and that will feed a lot of the experiences that your end users will have, right? So I do think most of the frustrations I see in corporations is that you have one view of the data. You don't have the entirety of the data. And one person brings that spreadsheet, the other person brings that database point. So harmonizing and standardizing on the right data layer, as Mr. Dittrich lined out and was mentioned by Frans, is actually the right strategy to do.
Mr. Post, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I do have something to say about that. What we see a lot when going through change, that people indeed say, okay, now you're making data transparent. So then indeed, what is the quality? And that's a difficult question. It depends on, so there is this question about history in data. You can set up a data platform and you can start feeding that with new data, and then you can structure it in a way that it works. But then people say, so what about the history, and how far can I look back, and how far does this work? Because before that, it wasn't really structured, and that is really a practical problem. And what do you do with that? I try to discuss how far historic data you want to translate, because a lot of it is maybe useless in when you start analyzing that. So you have to really figure out how, if I change the data model, how far back is my data still relevant? That is one thing. The other thing is you can only expose the data by starting to report it. So a lot of people just haven't looked at it in that structured way. This really requires a different way of thinking about data and thinking about reporting. So what a lot of people do and companies is manipulate the data that comes out of their system so they can create a reporting that actually matches what they want to see. If you start moving really with data being the basis of everything, you can no longer do that, because you will have to fix the data, because the reporting will follow from that automatically. So you no longer have a manipulation layer. So you can no longer do that. So you have to fix the data, but you can only do that when you see it first.
Yes, thank you. And now I have a question from the audience. Mr. Lindner, in your presentation, you mentioned a survey by McKinsey that almost 90% of finance functions are considered highly automatable. What does that mean in terms of the job profile of future CFOs? And then maybe Mr. Dittrich and Mr. Post can also elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was also equally stunned. I mean, I'm also an MBA by classical upbringing, right? So I studied finance and everything, and I'm equally shocked because it suggests obviously that certain parts of your corporate doing is replaceable. That said, I mean, if you take really a process inventory, which tasks are rather repetitive and predictable, it is really not surprising actually that McKinsey comes to this finding that 89% is repetitive. You are predictable to a certain extent, that you have, I mentioned the workflow example, for example, right? I mean, approval workflows will likely never ever go away, but if 9 out of 10 times you react one way, hopefully the system picks up on that and automates certain functions. So I do think it actually can be a rather rewarding marriage of technology and process evolution. And that will liberate, I would say, finance talent to really live up to, I think, what every MBA aspires to, really impacting the business, working with the business instead of being in hive and a bean counter and doing repetitive tasks over and over. I do think the analytical layer is so critical to that, right? Because the data foundation, the process steps that you can pick up on and where technology can certainly help to automate those. This is why most of the conversation I have right now is there's robotic process automation, there's something that's called the next evolutionary step, intelligent process automation. But at large, it's really, and that's part of the transformation discussion that both Mr. Post and Mr. Dittrich brought up, you need to be very smart to really look at the processes that slow you down right now and trust technology to be a catalyst to really change those processes. So the best practices of the past just simply won't do. To your question of the finance talent, I do think you will find what I also said earlier, that your talent that you seek to acquire will judge you as to how invested you are in those technologies that really allow them to live up to their real potential. And that is an interesting trend that we're seeing through this survey for sure.
Yeah. I agree with Jürgen, and if you look at it on a practical level, and I'm sure that every CFO will recognize this, everybody has an analysis department, and in many companies, the analysis department spends 90% of their time putting reports together, and then if you're lucky, 10% thinking about them and thinking what the business implications are and what and what this is really about, and sitting back and analyzing. And I'm sure, everybody will see this. I certainly see this. And so if people ask me, is this going to cost me my job? I say, well, depends what you think your job is. Yeah, it's going to stop you probably making endless Excel spreadsheets if you think that's a great skill, and if you think you want to be doing that for the rest of your life, fabulous. But that's going to disappear. But what you are going to get back in that is the opportunity to do something that's intelligent. and and that is more engaging, and that is about the future of your business. That's about strategy, that's about analysis, that's about impact, things like that. And that to me, that must be much. I love spreadsheets, and I'm sure most of you do, but there is something more exciting than that.
And that's how we try to go about it. We did not focus that much on just benchmarks. We did some benchmark on efficiency levels, fine. But then we took our team and had our Galderma leaders get into a room and say, what's the North Star? What's the theoretical best? So not just saying we have 200 legal entities and let's cut it by 10% gives you 180. We said we have 200. What's the theoretical best? Let's just dream for a second. What's the theoretical best? The answer was 70, because we're in 70 countries, one legal entity per country. And then from there, you layer in constraints. Okay, in this country, we really need 2 because of some legal reasons or tax reasons or whatever. And you get to a realistic ambition of 100. So we actually cut it from 200 to 100. And not just did, okay, let's get 10% better or 20%. So that thinking of really thinking North Star, what could the unconstrained theoretical best be in my business, delivers a lot of fundamental change, takes out a lot of complexity, and it's liberating to people. And as Frans has said, somebody's just sitting there and saying, I just want to do spreadsheets and I don't want to be intellectually lazy. Well, for those, it's threatening. For those that think further and really want to go further, it's liberating. And that to Jürgen's point, that's also the reason why we went more into cloud also, because Jesus, there is so much potential in it. If you think it to an end, you can really do away with a lot of baggage in a safe and in a reliable way. We're in the 21st century after all.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, and thank you very much. So as a last question, I would just briefly like to discuss with you if you see areas in finance that are less suited for data solutions. Are there limits where you can use these solutions? Maybe Mr. Post can start, and then Mr. Dittrich, and afterwards Mr. Lindner.
Yeah, the obvious ones, of course, the obvious easy ones are where you have repetitive work and where you have, and where systems can learn. So if you think invoice processing, you learn the system to scan, and once the system knows it all, it can actually do it itself. That's easy. Where people always need where it's not so easy is where it depends on personal, on a person, on visions, on strategy, on there it becomes much more difficult to automate that. Although I'm not, I have no illusions. I think any thinking process is repetitive anyway. So what's the level of creativity that you can't automate? That to me would be the question. I still have people who ask me, my managing partner the other day said, can you look me in the eye and see that say that this really works, and say that these numbers are real? And I say, yeah, I'll look you in the eye and I can do that. There's a personal component in that of trust, of knowing that somebody like me has looked at it, judgment, strategic choices. That I think is the field that is more difficult. But underneath, there's quite a lot that can be automated. I would say fortunately, because it makes it better quality. It makes it easier to achieve. It makes it quicker. It makes it cheaper. And why not? That's where the world goes. And that's where I think the differences are.
Yeah, and at Galderma, we've become a data and digitally driven company. Our purpose as a company is advancing dermatology for every skin story. For everybody has skin, everybody has a certain story around it. Therefore, we listen, we collect data, we analyze it. Many thousand skin stories per day, so to speak. And from that, we gain insights, translate them into better product, services, and customer experience. 90% of our marketing spend is digital these days. So you need a lot of data to direct it in the right direction. And we have quadrupled our share of e-commerce sales for Cetaphil, our almost billion-dollar brand here, to give a few examples. So for us, it's mainly customer data, customer preferences, what customers have done. You Google or you ask us about rosacea, therefore, these are the things we could give you to add value to you as you shape your skin story as you move through life. So for us, the data funnel is not closing, it's actually opening up. And that's also a reason why we went with cloud technology.
Yeah, I agree fundamentally with Frans and Thomas's point of view. I do think that data sets just become much, much richer. And with that, you have different insights that previously simply were impossible to tap into, especially at scale. So me being part of the technology provider side, right? Of course, we have a very vested interest to see what type of data sources can be made accessible quickly, how can they be visualized, but more importantly, how can you action on the data sets? And this is where I said insights are great, intelligence is even better. And that's where we see evolutionary steps where we see augmentation of the human potential first, right? We guide them, we think we see a pattern, but you need to consciously decide, okay, I'm okay with your proposal or I'm not. So the human element is not going to go away anytime soon. That said, if we detect patterns over and over again as a cloud provider, we can release the software in 3 months increments very quickly to our customer base. We can do A/B testing. We can see what really works, was adopted, and with that can fine tune the software and hopefully experience for our customers much, much quicker. So I do think while the goal is complete automation for as many tasks as possible, the first step is really augmentation, building trust that this is the right step to do, but you need to be open to work differently going forward. It's just the best practices of the past, to my point earlier, just likely won't carry you in the future. It's a very dangerous proposition to say best practices. I'm sometimes stuttering with the word because I think, oh, best practices, I do think they evolve very fast right now, and you really need to bank on technology to help you along the way. Sorry, Frans, you wanted to say something, I think.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to add is that so we a lot of us still think from our existing perspective. And so what you can say about data, there is so much data and there's so much data out there. And even in law firms, but in many other firms, we haven't even thought about what we can potentially use to change our business model or to enrich enrich the information we have in the company. That's actually very limited. If you think about, say, a law firm in M&A, if you start scanning the web for activity of around companies and people who are looking at it, and you can get intelligence there. And there are so many things that I'm afraid we haven't even thought about that we could use to, and that's another. So other than organizing our own the data that we currently have and making that better and aggregating that, the other focus is on what's out there that we could use in improving our business model.
I fully agree with you, Frans, and that's a little bit what the opportunity we had with Galderma coming out of a company, and we had to reinvent it new. We reinvented primarily our business model. Today we have only people who can do digital marketing. We don't have a chief digital officer because we can't park digital or data with somebody as a fig leaf. If you are in marketing in Galderma and you don't know how to do digital marketing, you don't have a job. It's as simple as that. So it's a business model transformation, and then data that you get, it's about prediction. It's about you have done this, you have purchased this across channels. So we predict what you may next need, and we feed you that as an offer in a tailored, customized way. So it's about thinking of the next step of what you may need and not just responding to what you tell us you need now.
Yeah. Gentlemen, as you see, we would have a lot of other subjects to discuss around this topic, but thank you very much for participating in this lively discussion. That was all for today. Before I go, I will just quickly tell you what's on for next week. The next installment of the webinar series will be on Tuesday, the 23rd November, again at 4 p.m. And it will be about the use of data in agriculture. The host will be my colleague, Alexander Trentin. I wish you a very nice afternoon and thank you for your time. Goodbye.